Hello and good evening, everyone. I forgot to unmute myself again. No matter how many times I do this, I keep forgetting to mute myself. Hello, assalamu alaikum, and welcome, everyone. So, this is the first time I'm actually streaming from YouTube. Before this, I streamed from my Facebook page. So, if you can hear me, if you're there, let me know. If you can hear me, drop me a hello. Tell me where you're from so that I know that you can hear me, so that I know that this is clear, because this is the very first time I am streaming from YouTube. Normally, I'm on Facebook, but I'm trying something new right now. Hello, everyone who has just joined. Okay, I am going to give this just 1 minute today because I've got quite a lot of things to share. And I do not want this session to drag on for too long. So we're going to give it another minute to allow a few more people to join us. Okay, so in the meantime, if you're already here, thank you so much for being here. Please drop me a hello. Let me know where you're from. Okay, so that I can know who you are. I can know where you're listening in from. And if the line is clear, if the sound is clear, just let me know that everything is in order, that everything is clear. And we should be ready to go in about a few more seconds. Yay! Okay. Okay. So we are going to begin, right? And if anybody else who joins would just jump in. Okay, so what we're doing today is I will be sharing tip number 7, which is the final tip on how you can start an English speaking environment at home. Okay, so very quickly, oops, very quickly, we are going to go through the first 6 tips that I have already shared prior to this session. Okay, so the first tip that I shared was to start speaking. In anything that we do, we need to start, we need to begin before we can get the ball rolling, before things can continue to move. Like you need to start the car before the car can move. You need to start pedaling before your bicycle can move. So you need to start speaking in order for you to get into the habit of actually speaking English at home. Tip number 2 is to have English moments. English moments here means that you spend 5 to 15 minutes a day for starters to start with. You would spend 5 to 15 minutes a day speaking in English with the members in your home. After a while, you will realize that you will be spending more than 15 minutes talking and you would get some responses back from the members in your home. So have English moments. Do not stress yourself by speaking in English for the entire day. It can become very stressful. English moments, keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it precise, as long as the practice is consistent and you have these moments every single day. Tip number 3 is to show it, especially if you are introducing the English language to your kids as they're toddlers, they are still below the age of 7. One of the best ways is to show it. So example, if you want them to sit down, show them the action of sitting down. If you want them to take the remote, show them the remote so that they know what you are saying through your actions and by looking at the items that you are saying. Tip number 4 is to translate. Now there's a formula to this. We are translating so that they can understand what you are trying to say. We are not translating because it makes life easy. We are only translating so that they can connect and make sense of what you're saying. So for example, if I want to say sit down, in my native language, Bahasa Melayu, sit down means duduk. So I would say sit down, duduk, sit down. So it's repeated so that they understand that when I say sit down, I'm also saying duduk. And then when I say that, I'm saying sit down again. So after a while, when this method of translation is repeated, they will eventually understand what you're trying to say. So you say it in English, translate it to your native language, and then say it again in English. That's the concept of translate in creating an English speaking environment at home. Tip number 5 is to watch English movies or cartoons with English subtitles. Okay, when this process happens every day at every movie or every cartoon that they watch, eventually our children will realize that what they are hearing is the same as the words that they see appear on the screen. Okay, tip number 6 is to label things. So label the things around the house. The computer, label it COMPUTER. The refrigerator, label it REFRI, GERATOR. And label it in full, using the full word, not short forms, yeah, because they are learning. Okay, if there's the television, label it. You have the cabinet, label it. Shoe rack, label it. The reason is because, say one day you want them to arrange their shoes on the shoe rack. If it's already labeled and you keep mentioning, put your shoes on the shoe rack, put your shoes on the shoe rack. When they go to the shoe rack, they would consistently see those words. So as you are repeating the instruction, they are looking at the words every single day. One fine day, they will realize and understand that, this is what shoe rack means. This is what shoe rack looks like. This is a shoe rack. So they would connect it all together, right? So are we ready for the final tip? So we are already at tip number 7. And tip number 7 is the final tip to creating an English speaking environment at home. Okay, so tip number 7 is to read. Now, reading is the most important process that you would have to go through in creating an English speaking environment at home. Here's why. In Islam itself, we learn that the first word revealed to our Prophet was Iqra. Iqra simply means read, to seek knowledge. So that alone shows that reading plays a very, very important role in our process to get information, to get knowledge. Okay, now scientifically, when we read, that's the process where we are absorbing information. When we read, we are getting information. So these things that we read become our input. We need the input in order for us to be able to produce the output, which is what we say. Without the knowledge, without the input, what do we talk about? Without information, the input, without information, what can we argue about? So we read in order to gain input so that we are able to then produce an output, which is our answers when we speak, when we debate, when we argue, when we write. Those are our output, but we need the input. Now let's take science, for example. It does apply a very similar concept. We learn the rules behind it, we read up about it, we do the research behind the science. Those are the input. And when we get those input, only then can we apply it through experiments, which is the output. So it's exactly the same concept. Even with math, we need the input. We need to understand the equations. We need to understand the formulas. We need to understand how these equations and formulas work. That's the input. And when we get that information, when we get that knowledge, we then translate that into an output by applying it through exercises and things like that. So reading, back to English, to create an English speaking environment at home. So reading is where we get the input, we get the knowledge, we get the information so that our brain, our mind can process, can digest the input, the information and the knowledge, so that it can then be changed into output, which is what we say and what we deliver. Okay, right. What I'm going to do next is I will break the reading tip into 2 parts. The first part is reading as a parent, and the second part is reading as an adult. Okay, so as a parent, In your efforts to create an English speaking environment at home, what you do is you read either to your children or with your children. Okay, so here's how these two are different. If you're reading to your children, it's a one-way thing. It's a one-way process where you are the one holding the book, you are the one reading, and your child or your children is just listening. So it's one way. You can do that. All right. There's no right or wrong in this process. Yeah. So reading to your children, it's them becoming the listener, and you are the one as the parent reading the book to them. Okay. In this process, the child either just listens to you or listens to you while looking at the book and looking at the words that you're reading in the book, but you're still reading it to them. Okay, so that's reading to your children. If you are reading with your children, what will happen is you would read and they would follow. So you're reading it with them. And as you go along, you are also interacting with your children by asking them, what word is this or what word is that? So it's kind of like a revision process where after you read, they repeat, or after you read, they identify the words. I'm going to give you an example. Okay. So again, as a parent, reading can be done in a way where you read to your children or you read with your children. Okay. Now, I am going to give you an example by using my all-time favorite book for children, which is the Peter and Jane series. I am rather biased to the Peter and Jane series. I grew up learning to read the Peter and Jane series, and I have started my children with reading using the Peter and Jane series also. The main reason why I like this series is because it starts with extremely simple words, extremely simple characters, and then it progresses. And there's a lot of repetition, which allows the child to be familiar with the words as they progress. Okay, so for tonight, one of the books that I'll be using as an example is the Peter and Jane book, and there's also going to be another one that I will use as an example. But ultimately, you may choose any children's book of your preference. You go to MPH, you go to Borders, you go to Kinokuniya, you go anywhere, any bookstore, any children's book you find appropriate, you find that would be suitable for your children, that will do. It's okay. You don't necessarily have to use the examples that I'm giving. Okay? Right. So let's begin with the first part where we read to our children. Okay? So I'm just going to show you the page. All right. So for example, in this page, we've got Peter is here, Jane is here, and Pat is here. Here they are. So when you as a parent, when you are reading to your child, that's all that you're doing. You are reading it and all they're doing is listening to you read. Okay, so you could be holding the book like this, reading, and your child could be in front of you, or you could be reading with your child next to you and they can see the words that you're reading, but you are the only one reading the book. Okay, now when you read with your child, it's a two-way thing. So example, if you say Peter is here, you would get your child to repeat Peter is here. So you would read a line, they would read a line. You would read the next line, they would read the next line. Or if your child is still very young, say 2 years old, 3 years old, it could be word by word. So you would start by saying Peter. Your child would repeat Peter. You would say is, your child will repeat is. You would say here, your child will repeat here. So that's reading with your child. So to your child, with your child, doesn't matter as long as the reading happens. Okay, so what happens when you read to or with your children? Okay, so just a simple example from this sentence alone, Peter is here. Automatically, your child is learning sentence structure. Peter is here. Next sentence says Jane is here. Again, the name comes first and then they hear the word is and then it shows that here, Jane is here. And Pat is here. Sentence structure again. Suddenly, the structure changes a little bit. Here they are. Okay. You do not need to explain anything grammar to them. You don't have to explain why is it Pat is here and then suddenly it changes to here they are. not at this stage just yet. What we are trying to do is to get them to be familiar with the sentence structure, with words. So in this page, from this page alone, they have already learned, by this book, they would learn 2 extra new words. But in this page, they would already have learned 5 words. Peter is here, Jane, Pat. Oh, that's 7, sorry. Here, 6, 7. Peter is here, Jane, Pat, they are. Already learning new words. And the thing about the Peter and Jane book is in the next page, those words are again repeated. Like next page, here they are. It's repeated again. So imagine you're reading something, a book that has a lot of repetition. Imagine that you're reading this every single day. Okay? The sentence here they are would already be something very familiar to your children. The words like Pat is here, Jane is here, or it means the name comes in front, is here, would be something that's very familiar to your children. So in a normal conversation, if you were to say I am here, or if you were to say your sister is here, it's something that is going to be very I've seen this before, I've heard this before, because mom or dad reads this to me. Okay, so that's how reading can already expose your children to correct sentence structure and correct grammar without having to go through the technical parts of it. Okay, so this is one example of a book which I personally love to use. All right, another book that's good, which I also use with my children, are these books. Give me a second. So this is from Raintree. Okay, if you can see this from Raintree. Again, you may use any kind of children's book that you feel suitable for you as a parent and also for your children. But these are the books that I normally use at home with my kids. So this book also has a lot of repeated, it also practice repetition. Okay, so I'm going to use this book, The Lost Sock. Right, so The Lost Sock. Again, even from the title alone, your children are already learning 3 words, The Lost Sock. Okay, when you go into the book, let me just get the first page out. Okay, so the first page goes, look, Dad, said Kate, my sock is not here. Second page goes, look, again, said Dad, here is a pink sock. So now between these first 2 pages alone, the word look, the word said, and the word here are already repeated, and also the word sock are already repeated. And this is just the second page. We haven't even gone through the rest, and it's repeated again and again. So when you read to your children or with your children, you are already exposing them to these words regularly, every day, consistently, without having to explain again, without having to explain why, the whys, the technical parts of it, nothing. Just read for them to become familiar. Okay, so the best way is to use children's book because the language is easy, the words are easy, and even as a parent, these are words that you can easily pronounce and easily explain. Like, what's a sock? A sock is something you wear on your feet when you want to wear shoes. Okay, something very simple. Or you can even just go to the drawer and pick a sock and say, this is a sock. Even in the picture, it shows what a sock is. The girl is reaching for her sock. So things that you can easily show your children, things you can easily explain to your children. That's why you use children's book when you want to start reading books in order to create an English speaking environment at home. Okay, so that is the first part where you are creating an English speaking environment at home as a parent. Expose your children to books, expose them to reading, because reading will help them gain that input. Sentence structure, grammar, vocabulary, the amount of new words that they would learn from reading, it's a lot, they would learn a lot from that alone. Okay, right. I'm going to go to the second part of reading, which is reading as an adult. Okay, believe it or not, if you are just starting All right, whether you are just starting again to you know learn the English language, or if you're just starting again to want to speak and learn the English language, okay, there is really no harm in you starting again by reading children's book, because again the language is easy and it would help you build your confidence again. The thing about us being adults is we would have learned the English language in a formal setting for at least 15 years: primary school, secondary school, college, university. So that's around 15 years, which means that at the back of our heads, we already know the language. But what has happened along the way is that we've not been practicing. So when there's no practice, we kind of forget what we've already learned. So as an adult, all that's left to do is just to bring back all these things. So it's actually not something new, okay? It's something that you know, which you just need to bring back. You need to spark that memory and bring it back. That's it. Okay, so there's really no harm. It's perfectly fine for you as an adult to start again by reading children's book. And if you are an adult and a parent, what better way than to start reading with your kids? So it's not like you reading the book because you need to read a children's book, but you are picking it back again, at the same time exposing your children to the wonders of reading. Okay, right. But if you are an adult who you've been reading, you've been reading, you've been speaking, but all you want to do is just to brush your language up a little bit more, then you can get more mature books, of course. Okay, so this is one thing that I just had in the drawer in my nightstand. Okay, so it's Awaken the Giant Within by Anthony Robbins. It's a very, very good read. It's a very, very popular book by Anthony Robbins. Okay, so if you are once again polishing, okay, if you want to polish your English, or even if you are just as an adult starting again to want to learn the English language, or you want to start to gain the confidence to to speak in English again, you can also start with books like this. However, there's a way to do it. Okay, if you are starting again, okay, or polishing, have small goals. Have small goals in the sense where if you are just about to start, there's no way you can finish the entire book hoping that you would understand everything you read in the book. And you would only be able to do that if you have been reading all your life. Okay, so we also need to be realistic in this context. So if you don't want to go through the process of reading, starting with simpler books, children's book or simpler books, and you want to go ahead and read books that are more mature, like this one, okay, what you would do is you would go a sentence a day, a paragraph a day. Okay, go slow. In each sentence, try to understand what it means. And if you realize that by the time you finish the first page, if you're not able to understand what the page means, chances are you will not be able to understand the entire book. So my advice is, as an adult, because what you're trying to do here is you are trying to gain your own self-confidence to speak the English language so that you can start an English speaking environment at home. So your confidence is very important in this equation. You need to have the confidence to be able to speak, to want to speak, to start to speak with the members in your home, with your kids, with your spouse. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is to pick up something that's difficult and then find that you feel defeated because I cannot understand what they're saying, I don't understand the words, I don't understand the sentence. So the last thing we want is for you yourself, as the one who wants to start the English speaking environment at home, to feel defeated, to feel like I cannot do this. That's not what we want, which is why I highly recommend that you start with simple books. And trust me, if you keep reading, one day you will get to the big books. All right, as long as it's consistent, you will get to the big books. Okay, so I will repeat again, there's no harm at all. There's absolutely no harm in starting to read kids books, simple books, in order for you to be able to gain your confidence to use the English language so that you can start an English speaking environment at home. Okay, all right, so step by step, baby steps. Okay, now I am going to link everything. Okay, I'm going to link everything from tip number 1 all the way to tip number 7. Okay, first things first. The first thing that we all need to remember, the first thing that we all need to be aware of, and this is something we need to accept, acknowledge, and accept. Learning anything takes time. Learning anything is a journey, including learning the English language. It doesn't matter how old you are, 2, 5, 7, 17, 37, 42, 50, 62. It really doesn't matter how old we are. But for as long as we are alive, for as long as we want to learn, learning is a journey. Therefore, if you started learning the English language, embracing the English language, speaking the English language from a young age, chances are 20, 30 years down the road, you already have that confidence. But that comes decades after. Okay. However, if you are at this juncture or you're at this stage of your life where you are just starting again, okay, I'm using the word again because, like I said, we would have typically learned the language in a formal setting for about 15 years. So what we're doing is we're actually picking it back up because we've learned it, we stopped using it, and then now we're going, okay, I want to get this back. Okay, so we need to remember that that's the beginning of your journey. We cannot take the years that you've left English behind, and we cannot count from the day you started learning English at school. We already cannot count all that because there was this pace or this time in your life where you stopped using the language. So regardless of your age, regardless of how old you are right now, if you want to start again, that's your starting point. So we need to acknowledge and accept the fact that learning the English language, just like learning anything in life, is a journey, and therefore it takes time. It takes time. We cannot expect to learn it today and then by next week, how come I still cannot speak? How come I'm still not confident? It doesn't work that way. It's a journey. And we will share these tips step by step. Okay, everything is not given one shot. Okay, right. So having said that, what I'm going to do now is I am going to piece everything together from tip number 1 to tip number 7. Okay, all right. Even though these are given as tips, even though these are given as steps, you may do all these things concurrently, all at the same time, different times of the day, but everything's happening at the same time. You may also choose or decide to break it up. You want to do this first and then that. Okay, so you may choose to do that as well. So you can do everything at one go, or you may break it up and choose which ones you want to do first. Okay, so when you start speaking, tip number 1, when you, as the person creating that English speaking environment at home, when you start speaking, you are already practicing. Personally, yourself, you are already practicing to speak the English language. At the same time, you are exposing your family members, the members in your home, to words in the English language. Okay? It can be the easiest of words to the most bombastic word. It doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't say that start speaking perfect English. It doesn't say start speaking bombastic words. It says start speaking, as simple as please come here. Okay, start speaking. So when you start speaking, you are already exposing everybody in your homes. That increases vocabulary. And when you speak, that's your output. For them, they're listening, so that's their input. So they're getting these information, they are getting these knowledge. Okay, that's their input. So their mind's going to start working. So one day they will be ready to then produce their own input. And then we go to tip number 2. Now that you've started speaking, as to not really cause any chaos or fear within the members in your home, you do this through English moments where you spend a certain number of time in a day speaking to them in English. So as I've shared before, it could be over dinner, it could be in the car as you pick your kids up, it could be in the or during a car ride when you're heading towards somewhere, it could be before bedtime, it could be in the morning when everybody's getting ready to go to school. Simple things like get ready, are you ready? Breakfast is ready. Come down and have your breakfast. Did you? Where's your bag? Have you put on your socks? Very simple English moments. Okay, so you've already through English moments you are speaking again more words, more vocabulary, more familiarity for both you as the one speaking and for the person who's listening as that continues to become their input. So even if you speak for only around 15 minutes a day, it's happening every single day. So then there is consistency and there is um, familiarity. There's enough exposure there. Okay. Now, on top of that, you are showing them what you mean. Okay. So you're saying, come here. You're showing, come here. So more words, more moments, and you're also showing it to them. So when you show it to them, it's your output, but for them, it's their input. So they are getting more information. They are absorbing more knowledge because you are showing it. At the same time, you are translating. Okay. So just in case they don't understand what you're saying in English, you are helping to translate those words into your native language, the language that they are familiar with. So they are able to put all these things together. So when they're able to put all these things together, things are starting to make sense. So they're listening to you speak every day through English moments, little chunks of English every single day. You are showing them what you mean. You're showing them the things that you mean. And then you're also translating it to them so that they can understand you better. And then on top of that, you introduce to them English movies or cartoons with English subtitles. So when they're listening to the movie or the cartoon, chances are they will start listening or they would start hearing words that they've been hearing you say every single day through your English moments. Chances are they would be seeing things in the movie or in the cartoons that you have been showing to them. And they would hear the words that you've been translating, the words, sentences, phrases that you have been translating to them. So again, familiarity. And then on top of that, they also see what's coming out. Okay, so when we're doing this with our children, or even if you're doing this with your children who are already big, like teenagers maybe, they are already going to school and they are already learning English at school. They're reading in school, they're writing in school. So these words automatically become familiar words. I've seen this in school. I've seen this in my textbook. I heard mom saying this. I heard dad saying this. Or now this person in the movie is saying it. Aha, they are going to start connecting the dots. Okay. And then you're also practicing labeling things. So when they see certain words in the movie or in the cartoon, they're going to go like, didn't I see this on the computer? This word, it's labeled on the computer when I do my work. Didn't I see this on on the laptop? Didn't I see this word at the phone? Again, they're going to connect it. And then you throw in the most important process of it all, which is reading. Again, they're reading at school, they're reading in kindergarten, they're reading, and then you are also on top of it all reading with them, reading to them. Things are going, they would, even when you're reading, even when, if you're reading to them, not with them, even if you are reading to them, the words that you would be reading would be familiar words. Example, the book with the lost sock. Look. I'm sure during English moments you would have used the word look. If your kids have gone to kindergarten, they would hear the word look. If they watch a movie or a cartoon, they would hear and see the word look. Hear the word look and see the word look from the subtitle. And now you are reading the book and there's also the word look. Things will definitely begin to connect. And this is an example that I'm giving with just one word. Imagine the number of words that's actually in this entire book. And that's just one book. And imagine if you're reading a different book every day. That's a lot of words. Not something I can count tonight. Definitely not something I can count tonight. So these things would eventually come together. And after a while, give it a month with consistency. Give it a month, give it 2 months, give it 3 months. You will begin to realize that your children's input or the input that the members in your home have received will begin to change into output. They will begin to respond to you in English. They will begin to ask you questions in English. They will begin to want to speak and engage with you in English because now they are becoming more familiar with the language. They are hearing the same thing again and again. They are seeing the same words again and again. So that is familiarity. So when you do all of these steps, basically what you're doing is you're giving them the exposure that they need in order for them to become familiar with the language so that they gain the confidence to speak the English language. That's basically it. Okay? That's it. So those are my 7 tips on how you can start an English speaking environment as a parent, okay? Especially for your children. And it doesn't matter how old your children are. It doesn't matter that they are learning English at school already, because the point here is to create an English speaking environment at home. And as I've shared in the very first video that I did back in January, when I shared tip number 1 and tip number 2, the reason why I emphasize a lot on creating an English speaking environment at home is because home is where it's safe. Home is where your kids can make mistakes. Home is where they make mistakes and they don't get laughed at. They don't get ridiculed. Home is where they know that you are there to support them as their parents. Home is where it's comfortable. Even if you laugh, they know you laugh because you love them and not because you're making fun of them. And when they realize that they have this support from you, when they go out there and if they face any stumbling blocks, which they are going to face, let's be honest, when our kids go out and speak in English in certain environments, they're going to get ridiculed, they're going to get laughed at. This is an honest truth, and this is a reality that we cannot run away from. But when that happens, when they leave the nest, when they leave home and they go out there and they end up speaking in English in an environment where they don't normally speak English, they might feel a little bit taken aback. They might feel a little bit defeated or demotivated, but at least they know that when they go home, they have you as their rock solid support because you have given them that confidence. You've given them that exposure. You've made them familiar with the language, and you have given them the confidence to speak and use the language. Now, as they grow even older, they will know when to use the language, when not to use the language. And what's most important, what's most crucial here is that when the time comes where they need to speak the language, they will feel comfortable and it will become very easy for them to speak in English, answer questions in English, ask questions in English, participate in meetings run in English, start a meeting in English, interrupt, argue, give their feedback, give their opinion in a setting that allows and needs them to speak in English. So as our children grow older, they will know when to and when not to. And when it comes down to the most crucial moments, they can speak the language. No hesitance, full of confidence, because you have created that environment and that comfort for them from home. That's why I always emphasize start to create an English speaking environment at home, because home is where it begins. We learn rules from home. We learn everything from home, from our parents. That's where the emphasis is. Okay? So that's pretty much it. Those are the 7 tips to creating an English speaking environment at home. Give it a try. You can do everything at once in different times of the day. You can choose the tips that you want to apply at home. Give it time. It's a journey. Learning is a journey. Give it time. Be consistent, and I guarantee you will see results. It's impossible for us not to see results when we are consistent. When you consistently learn to ride a bike, you know how to ride a bike. When you consistently learn how to sew, you know how to sew. When you're consistently making presentations, you become good at giving presentations. When you're consistently speaking English at home, practicing these tips at home, give it 3 months minimum. Everybody will get there. But at least we'll start. Okay? So with that, this will be the final video for the next 2 months since Ramadan is coming. I will not be going live in the month of Ramadan, also to respect the prayer times, Tarawih times, and I also want to spend more time in that department. So I will be seeing you live again, hopefully in June. And in June, what I'll do is I will share with you a key to all these tips. Okay, I've been mentioning this, but I'm still going to have a session where I elaborate a lot on this key. And I hope that with the 7 tips and with that one final key, which I will share, inshallah, in June, you will be able to put everything together and you will be able to create an English speaking environment at home. With that, I thank you all for joining. I thank you all for watching. Good luck. Happy Ramadan, everybody. And I'll see you again, inshallah, in June. Have a good night. Have a good evening. Goodbye.